Are relationships just coincidence or spiritual lessons? Have you ever wondered why certain people come into your life? Some bring joy, love, and warmth, while others challenge you, leaving you feeling hurt, disappointed, or even abandoned. Are these encounters just random? Or is there a deeper meaning behind them? According to Buddhist wisdom, no meeting is accidental. Every person who crosses your path carries a lesson, a chance for you to grow, reflect, and evolve. A kind friend may teach you about love and trust, while a difficult relationship can help you develop patience, forgiveness, and resilience. Each connection, no matter how pleasant or painful, serves a purpose in your spiritual journey. Today, I want to share the story of Mary, a woman in her 70s who has been living alone since her husband passed away. She has a son, David, who was once very close to her. But over the years, their bond has faded. David, now busy with his career and family, rarely calls or visits. Their conversations feel distant, almost obligatory. Mary feels abandoned and confused. What did I do wrong? Why has my son changed? She often wonders. One day, a friend invites Mary to a Buddhist study group. At first, she is skeptical, but as she listens to the teachings on karma, impermanence, and the purpose of relationships, something shifts inside her. She begins to realize that maybe the problem isn't David. It's the way she sees the situation. Her journey from pain to understanding, from attachment to acceptance, is a powerful example of a fundamental Buddhist truth. Every relationship is an opportunity to grow. If you've ever felt hurt by someone you love, whether it's a child, a friend, or a family member, this story will offer you a fresh perspective. Join me as we explore Mary's journey and uncover the lessons hidden within our closest relationships. Have you ever struggled with a difficult relationship? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss an inspiring lesson on Buddhist wisdom. Mary's pain. Mary sat in her quiet living room, the ticking clock on the wall the only sound filling the empty space. She stared at her phone, her fingers hovering over the screen, debating whether to call her son, David. It had been weeks since they last spoke. She could still hear his voice from their last conversation. Distant, hurried. Sorry, Mom. I'm really busy right now. I'll call you later. Later never came. It wasn't always like this. There was a time when David would run into the house, after school, eager to tell her about his day. As a child, he would curl up next to her on the couch, asking endless questions about the world. Even as a young adult, he would call her just to chat, to share his thoughts, his dreams, and even his worries. But over the years, things changed. At first, Mary blamed his job. He had built a successful career, and she knew how demanding it was. Then, he got married, had children of his own, and life became even busier for him. She understood that. She tried to be patient, to give him space, but deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was no longer important in his life. Birthdays passed with just a quick phone call. Holidays were spent at his in-laws. The visits that used to bring her so much joy became rare, and, when they did happen, they felt forced. Conversations were polite, but lacked the warmth they once had. She felt like a guest in her own son's life. One evening, Mary gathered the courage to tell David how she felt. She chose her words carefully, not wanting to sound too emotional. I miss you, David. We don't talk the way we used to. His response was casual, almost dismissive. Mom, I love you, but things are just really hectic right now. You have to understand that I have a lot on my plate. Understand? She had spent her entire life putting him first. Understanding his needs, his struggles, his dreams. But now, when she needed him, she was supposed to just understand. That night, Mary lay awake, staring at the ceiling, a dull ache in her chest. Had she done something wrong? Had she been too protective, too demanding, or not enough of something? She replayed memories in her mind, searching for a moment where things had shifted. But there was no single event, no harsh words exchanged, just the slow, quiet drifting apart of two people who had once been inseparable. Loneliness settled into her bones. She tried filling her days with activities, gardening, reading, even volunteering at the local community center, but nothing could replace the deep longing she felt. She had always imagined growing old surrounded by family, with her son checking in on her, sharing meals, laughter, and stories. But reality was different. The pain wasn't just in being alone, it was in feeling forgotten. One afternoon, as Mary sat on a park bench watching the autumn leaves fall, a friend from her yoga class sat down beside her. Sensing her sadness, the friend asked what was on her mind. At first, Mary hesitated, but then the words came spilling out. The loneliness, the resentment, the confusion. Her friend listened patiently, and then said something that lingered in Mary's mind long after their conversation ended. Maybe this isn't about what you've lost. Maybe it's about what you need to learn. Mary frowned. Learn? What lesson could possibly come from this kind of heartbreak? That night, as she sat alone at her kitchen table, she found herself thinking about that question. If there was something to learn from this pain, what could it be? Little did she know, this question would be the beginning of a journey, one that would change the way she saw her son, herself, and the nature of relationships forever. Discovering Buddhist wisdom, Mary couldn't stop thinking about her friend's words. Maybe this isn't about what you've lost. Maybe it's about what you need to learn. At first, the idea frustrated her. What lesson could possibly come from feeling abandoned by the one person she had loved unconditionally? What was there to learn from being left behind? One afternoon, as she walked past the community center, she noticed a small sign outside. Buddhist study group. Finding peace in difficult relationships. Something about those words stopped her in her tracks. She had never been particularly religious, but she had always been curious about Buddhism, the calmness it seemed to bring to people's lives. With nothing to lose, she stepped inside. The room was simple and warm, filled with the scent of incense and quiet murmurs of conversation. A kind-looking teacher, an older man in simple robes, greeted her with a gentle nod. She took a seat among a small group of people, all of whom seemed to be carrying their own silent burdens. The lesson that day was about karma and relationships. The teacher began by saying, "Every person who enters our life does so for a reason. No relationship is accidental." Mary listened closely. The teacher explained that in Buddhism, relationships are deeply connected to karma, the law of cause and effect. The way people treat us, and the way we respond, is shaped by past actions, sometimes even from lifetimes before. He described relationships as mirrors, reflecting back to us the parts of ourselves that need healing or growth. When someone in your life causes you pain, he said, instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" try asking, "What is this trying to teach me?" Mary felt a lump rise in her throat. She had spent so much time dwelling on her pain, feeling rejected by David, that she had never stopped to ask what this experience could reveal about herself. The teacher continued, "Some relationships are meant to bring joy. Others are meant to challenge us. The people who hurt us the most are often our greatest teachers." That idea unsettled her. How could David, her own son, the child she had raised with love and sacrifice, be her teacher? Later, as the class came to an end, Mary stayed behind to ask the teacher a question. "I don't understand. How is my son, who barely speaks to me anymore, supposed to be my teacher? All I feel is pain." The teacher smiled gently. "Pain is a powerful teacher too. It shows us where we are still attached, where we are still holding on." He continued, "You are suffering because you believe your relationship with your son should be a certain way. But everything in life is impermanent. People change. Relationships change. Holding on to what was, instead of accepting what is, creates suffering." Those words hit Mary like a wave. Holding on to what was, instead of accepting what is. She had spent years clinging to the image of David as her little boy. The son who needed her, who loved her in a way she understood. But David wasn't that little boy anymore. He had grown, evolved, and built his own life. Was it possible that she was suffering not because he had abandoned her, but because she refused to let go of the past? The teacher then shared a story about the lotus flower, a powerful Buddhist symbol. The lotus grows in muddy waters, yet it rises above the mud and blooms into something beautiful. Likewise, our suffering can be the very thing that helps us grow, if we let it. Mary thought about that all the way home. Maybe, just maybe, this pain wasn't meant to break her. Maybe it was meant to teach her something about herself. That night, instead of crying over the past, she did something she hadn't done in a long time. She sat in silence, just breathing, just being. For the first time, she began to wonder, what if this isn't the end of my relationship with David? What if it's the beginning of a new way of loving? One without expectations, without demands. She didn't know the answer yet, but for the first time in a long time, she felt a sense of peace, practicing mindfulness in relationships. The next morning, Mary woke up feeling different. There was a calmness inside her, something she hadn't felt in a long time. Maybe it was the lesson from the Buddhist study group. Maybe it was the realization that she had been holding on too tightly. Either way, she knew one thing. If she wanted peace, she had to change the way she saw her relationship with David. She sat by the window, holding a warm cup of tea, watching the sun rise. She closed her eyes and thought of her son. Instead of feeling hurt or abandoned, she tried something new. May David be happy. May he be healthy. May he be at peace. It felt strange at first, almost unnatural. For so long, she had been waiting for him to call, waiting for him to visit, waiting for him to need her again. But now, she simply wished him well, without expecting anything in return. Days turned into weeks, and little by little, she felt lighter. The heavy ache in her chest wasn't as strong as before. Then, one afternoon, the phone rang. "Hey, Mom," David said. His voice was still hurried, but for the first time in a long time he asked, "How are you?" It wasn't much, but it was something. That evening, Mary thought about their conversation. For years, she had wanted him to listen to her, to hear her pain, to understand her loneliness. But had she ever truly listened to him? Not just to his words, but to what was underneath them. The next time they spoke, she tried something different. Instead of filling the silence with guilt or expectation, She just listened. When he mentioned how stressful work had been, she didn't say, "But you never have time for me." She simply said, "That sounds tough. I'm here if you ever want to talk." And to her surprise, he did. That was the night she sat down with an old journal and wrote something she never thought she would. "I forgive you, David. Not because you asked for it, but because I no longer want to carry this pain." As she closed the book, she realized she wasn't just forgiving him, she was forgiving herself too. For the years she spent resenting, for the times she let loneliness define her, for all the moments she had wished for something different instead of appreciating what was. She started filling her days with little joys. A morning walk in the park, a cup of coffee at her favorite cafe, an old book she had been meaning to reread. For the first time in a long time, she was living for herself. And something unexpected happened. The less she clung to David, the more naturally their relationship improved. He started calling more often, not out of obligation, but because their conversations felt different, lighter, warmer. One evening, as she was watering her plants, her phone rang again. "Mom," David said, "would you like to come over for dinner this weekend?" Mary felt tears well up, but this time, they weren't from sadness. "I'd love to," she said, smiling. And for the first time in years, she truly meant it.